Mom, please don't make a scene. Patricia has done more for this family than you have in years. That was what my daughter whispered to me at the entrance of the Asheville Country Club, while I stood there holding a small velvet box in one hand and my invitation in the other. For a moment, I thought I had misheard her. I was 72 years old, but my hearing was still perfectly fine. My name is Margaret Whitaker, and until that night, I believed there were certain places a mother could not be replaced. A family table, a grandchild's birthday, a daughter's wedding anniversary. I was wrong. The ballroom was warm and bright, filled with white roses, gold-rimmed glasses, and the soft kind of piano music people use when they want everything to look expensive and peaceful. Lauren and Evan were celebrating their 20th wedding anniversary, and I had spent 3 months saving for the navy blue dress I wore that evening. It wasn't fancy by their standards, but it was the best thing in my closet. I had even gone to the salon that morning and let a young woman curl my silver hair, while she told me I looked elegant. I almost believed her. When I walked in, I saw the long family table near the windows, the one closest to the cake and the framed photos of Lauren and Evan through the years. I saw my grandchildren, Sophie and Mason, laughing with their cousins. I saw Evan's mother, Patricia Hayes, sitting in the chair beside Lauren, wearing pearls and a cream-colored suit, smiling like the room had been built around her. Then I saw the place cards. Evan Hayes, Lauren Hayes, Sophie Hayes, Mason Hayes, Patricia Hayes, mother of the family. I looked for my name. It was not there. After a few seconds, I found it at a small round table near the back, between Evan's co-worker and a couple I had never met. Margaret Whitaker. No title.
No relation.
Just a name placed far enough away that I would not appear in the family photographs. I was still staring at that card when Lauren touched my elbow and guided me toward the hallway. Her smile stayed on for the room, but her fingers tightened just enough for me to understand I was being moved, not welcomed. "Mom," she said softly, "please don't make a scene." I looked at her face, the face I had washed with warm cloths when she had fevers, the face I had kissed before every first day of school, the face I had watched sleep in hospital beds when her asthma got bad and the doctors told me to stay calm. "I'm not making a scene," I said. My voice sounded smaller than I wanted it to. Lauren glanced back toward Patricia, who was laughing with Sophie, her hand resting gently on my granddaughter's shoulder. "Patricia has done more for this family than you have in years," Lauren said. "The kids are used to her being the grandmother figure now. I need you to understand that." The grandmother figure. Not their grandmother. Not my mother. Not the woman who stayed up through breathing treatments, school fundraisers, late-night phone calls, mortgage scares, broken hearts, and every emergency Lauren said she could not handle alone. Just the grandmother figure. I looked down at the velvet box in my hand. Inside was a silver bracelet that had belonged to my mother, then to me. 3 generations of women had worn it. I had planned to give it to Sophie that night because she had just turned 12, the same age I was when my mother first let me try it on. I had imagined telling her the story quietly, maybe after dinner, maybe while Lauren smiled and remembered that some traditions were not bought. They were carried. But through the open ballroom doors, I watched Patricia lift Sophie's wrist and fasten a diamond bracelet around it while the table applauded. Sophie's eyes widened. Lauren clapped. Evan took pictures. Patricia looked up and saw me watching. She smiled at me, not cruelly. That would have been easier. She smiled with pity, as if I were an old piece of furniture the family had finally learned how to live around. I did not cry. I did not raise my voice. I did not ask my daughter when she had decided I no longer belonged beside her. I simply closed the velvet box. Lauren sighed, relieved, mistaking my silence for obedience. "Thank you for understanding," she said, then walked back into the ballroom and took her place beside the woman who had been given mine. I stayed for 11 minutes. Long enough to watch the photographer gather the family near the cake. Long enough to see Patricia stand in the center, while I remained near the back wall with my purse against my ribs. Long enough to hear someone say, 3 generations of Hayes women, as if I had not given birth to one of them. Then I left before dessert. The October air outside was cool, and the parking lot lights made everything look flat and pale. I sat in my car with the bracelet box on my lap, listening to the muffled laughter from inside the country club. My hands were steady. That surprised me. Heartbreak usually shakes a person. This time it settled. Quiet. Heavy. Clear. I drove home through the Blue Ridge foothills without turning on the radio. When I unlocked my front door, the house was dark except for the lamp I always left on in the living room, the one Richard bought me before he passed. On my kitchen table sat a white folder Lauren had left there 2 days earlier when she came by to talk about making things easier for everyone. I had not opened it then. I thought it was about insurance forms or medical contacts. That night, still wearing my navy dress, I opened it. The first page said Estate Transition Plan, Whitaker Assets. Under it were lists, my house, my retirement account, the cabin outside Boone, my savings, my jewelry. Then I turned one more page and saw the words talking points, declining capacity. I read them once, then again. My daughter had not only replaced me at the family table, she was preparing to replace me on paper. I closed the folder, placed both hands flat on the table, and breathed in slowly. By Monday morning, my attorney would know everything. By Wednesday, every name in my will would begin to change. But that night, in the quiet of my own kitchen, I finally understood the truth. Lauren was not waiting for me to die. She was trying to make me disappear while I was still alive. I did not sleep that night. I sat at my kitchen table until the sky outside the windows turned from black to gray, with Lauren's white folder open in front of me and my mother's silver bracelet resting beside it like a witness. Every few minutes, I told myself there had to be another explanation. Maybe Lauren had misunderstood something. Maybe Evan had written those notes. Maybe Patricia had pushed too hard and my daughter had simply gone along because she hated conflict. Mothers are very good at building excuses for the children who break them. We can build whole houses out of maybe. But the folder did not leave much room for mercy. There were printed estimates of my home in Asheville, recent enough to include the new roof I had paid for the previous spring. There was a handwritten note beside the cabin outside Boone that said, "Good short-term rental potential." There was a list of my bank branches, my life insurance policy, my retirement account, even the small certificate of deposit Richard and I had opened 31 years earlier, when Lauren was still losing baby teeth. Then there was that second page. Talking points, declining capacity. Under it, someone had typed phrases like forgetfulness, emotional instability, difficulty managing household decisions, vulnerable to outside influence. I read that last one 3 times. Outside influence. I had spent my entire adult life being the steady person in Lauren's emergencies, and now she was preparing to describe me as someone who could not be trusted with her own front door. At 7:15 in the morning, my phone buzzed. Lauren. I let it ring until it stopped. Then came a text. Mom, I hope you are not upset about last night. It was a lot of people, and I was just trying to keep things smooth. I stared at the words for a long time. Smooth. That was what she called removing me from the family table. Smooth. A second text came before I could set the phone down. Also, did I leave a white folder at your place? Evan needs it back, for some paperwork. Please do not go through it. My fingers went cold, but my mind became calm. I typed 4 words. I will look later. Then I took pictures of every page. Not some of them. Every page. I laid them flat under the kitchen light and photographed them slowly, making sure the dates, notes, and headings were clear. I sent nothing to Lauren. I called no one in anger. At 8:30, I called Thomas Caldwell. Thomas had handled Richard's estate after my husband passed. He was the kind of attorney who never raised his voice because he never had to. His office was on the 2nd floor of a brick building downtown, above a bakery that always smelled like cinnamon rolls in the morning. When his receptionist answered, I heard myself say, "This is Margaret Whitaker. I need to see Thomas today. It is about my will." She offered me an appointment the following week. I said, "No. Today." There was a pause. Something in my voice must have told her not to argue. By 10:45, I was sitting across from Thomas in his office, with Lauren's folder in my lap and the silver bracelet in my purse. He looked older than the last time I had seen him, thinner around the face, but his eyes were as sharp as ever. "Margaret," he said gently, "tell me what happened." I opened the folder and slid it across his desk. He began reading. I watched his expression change by inches. Not shock. Attorneys are trained not to show that. It was something colder. Concern becoming strategy. He turned the page with a heading about declining capacity, then looked at me over his glasses. Did you know they were preparing this? No. Have you signed anything recently? Not that I remember. The words tasted terrible the moment they left my mouth. Thomas heard it too. He leaned forward. Do not say it that way again. Not to them. Not to anyone. You say, I have not signed any estate documents, powers of attorney, or transfers. Clear language matters now. I nodded. My throat tightened, but I forced myself to stay still. Thomas, I said, are they trying to take my house? He did not answer quickly. That frightened me more than any yes could have. They may be trying to position themselves to control your decisions, he said. There is a difference, but not enough of one to ignore. I looked at the folder on his desk. My daughter's careful notes. My son-in-law's rental estimates. Patricia's name written beside the words family support witness. A witness to what, I wondered? My decline? My surrender? My disappearance? Thomas placed both hands on the folder and spoke slowly. Margaret, before we revise anything, we need to protect 3 things. Your legal capacity, your assets, and your paper trail. I gave a small laugh, but there was no humor in it. I thought I came here to change my will.
You did, he said.
But if they're building a story that you are not competent, then we need to build the truth before they build the lie. For the first time since the country club, my eyes burned. Not because I was sad. Because I understood. This was not a family argument anymore. This was not about Patricia sitting in my chair, or Sophie wearing a diamond bracelet instead of mine. That had only been the pretty part of something ugly. Thomas took out a yellow legal pad and began writing. Cognitive evaluation. Updated medical letter. Revocation of prior authorizations. New will. New trust. Beneficiary review. Security changes. Documentation. He wrote each word like a door being locked. Then he looked up and said, Margaret, I need you to be very careful. Do not confront Lauren. Do not return the folder yet. Do not tell them what you know. I thought of Lauren's text waiting on my phone. Please do not go through it. I thought of her hand on my elbow, moving me out of sight. I thought of Patricia smiling from the center of my family. What should I tell her? I asked. Thomas closed the folder. Tell her you found it. Tell her you will give it back when she comes by. Then let her think you are still the woman she can manage. I sat there for a long moment. Then I picked up my purse, stood carefully, and said the first honest sentence I had spoken all morning. She has mistaken quiet for weak. Thomas nodded once. Then let us correct that. That afternoon, after I left Thomas Caldwell's office, I did something I had not done in years. I drove without turning toward home. I passed my street, past the grocery store where Lauren used to beg for strawberry Pop-Tarts, past the elementary school where I had once stood in the rain waiting for her field trip bus because she was afraid I would forget her. I ended up at the overlook on the Blue Ridge Parkway, the one Richard and I used to visit on Sunday afternoons when Lauren was little and gas was cheap enough that a drive could count as entertainment. The mountains rolled out in front of me, blue and soft and endless, and for the first time in a long while, I let myself remember what kind of mother I had been before my daughter decided I was an inconvenience. Lauren was not an easy child, though I would have never said that out loud when she was young. She was bright, sensitive, stubborn, and sick more often than any child should be. Asthma. The doctors called it, but that little word did not capture the sound of a 6-year-old girl fighting for breath at 2 a.m. while her mother counted seconds between wheezes. I knew the route to Mission Hospital by heart. I knew which vending machine took quarters and which nurses would let me stay past visiting hours. I knew how to smile at Lauren through my fear, because children read their mothers like weather. If I looked scared, she became scared. So I became sunshine, even when I was breaking inside. Richard was alive then, working long days repairing heating and air conditioning units all over Buncombe County. He was a good man, but steady pay did not always mean enough pay. Medical bills came in white envelopes with red numbers. I learned to stack them by due date. I learned to stretch a pot roast into 3 dinners. I learned that a mother can be tired enough to fall asleep standing at the kitchen sink and still wake when her child coughs from the next room. When Lauren was 12, she gave me a Mother's Day card made from yellow construction paper. The glue had wrinkled the corners, and she had drawn a crooked heart on the front. Inside, in purple marker, she wrote, "You are my safe place." I kept that card in the top drawer of my dresser for 32 years. I still had it. That was what hurt the most. Not the missing place card. Not Patricia sitting beside her. Not even the folder. It was the distance between that little girl who called me safe and the grown woman who was preparing to call me unstable. Richard died when Lauren was 19. A stroke took him on an ordinary Thursday morning while I was folding towels in the laundry room. One moment he was asking if we had coffee. The next, the life we had built changed shape. Forever. Lauren was at Chapel Hill then, 220 miles away, and I remember calling her dorm room with my hand pressed so hard against the wall that my palm ached for days. She screamed into the phone when I told her. I wanted to collapse, but I did not. Mothers do not collapse when their children are watching, even from a distance. We wait until the door is closed. After the funeral, the insurance was smaller than everyone assumed, and the mortgage did not care that I was grieving. I sold Richard's fishing boat. I sold the gold watch his father had given him. I sold my anniversary ring, the one with the tiny diamond he apologized for when he bought it because he said I deserved bigger. I never told Lauren that. She thought scholarships and loans carried her through college. They helped, but they did not pay for the winter coat she needed, or the meal plan increase, or the car repair outside Durham when she called crying because she had a final the next morning. I paid. I always paid. When she married Evan, I paid for the flowers because Lauren said the florist needed a deposit by Friday and Evan's family was handling the rehearsal dinner. Patricia arrived in our lives that week wearing ivory silk and calm authority. She was charming. Everyone said so. She had the kind of voice that made instructions sound like generosity. "Margaret, dear, you should sit and enjoy yourself," she told me, while moving my centerpiece ideas to another table. "We have it handled." At the time, I thought she was helping. I wanted to like her. God knows I tried. When Sophie was born, Lauren called me from the hospital at 3 a.m. Her voice was shaking. "Mom, I need you." I drove through rain so heavy my windshield wipers could barely keep up. I stayed 3 nights in a vinyl chair that made my back burn. I changed diapers, washed bottles, cooked casseroles, folded tiny pink socks, and told my daughter she was doing beautifully even when she snapped at me from exhaustion. When Mason came 2 years later, I did it again. When Evan lost his job for 7 months, I quietly covered 2 mortgage payments and called it a loan only so his pride could survive it. They never paid it back. I never asked. That is the strange math of motherhood. We remember every sacrifice, then pretend we forgot, so our children can feel free. But sitting at that overlook with Lauren's folder on the passenger seat, I understood something I had avoided for years. Lauren had not forgotten what I had done. She had counted on it. She had counted on my silence, my forgiveness, my habit of making excuses for her. She had counted on me being too ashamed to defend myself when she used words like emotional and unstable. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Lauren. "Mom, Evan really needs that folder. Patricia is coming with us tomorrow to pick it up. Please do not turn this into something dramatic." I looked at the mountains. Then I looked at my mother's bracelet, still in the velvet box beside me. My hands were steady again. I typed back, "Of course. Come tomorrow at 4. Then I placed the phone face down, started the car, and drove home knowing they were coming to collect paper. They had no idea I had already started collecting proof. They arrived the next day at 3:58, which was exactly like Lauren. 2 minutes early, so she could feel patient when other people were not ready. I watched their car pull into my driveway from the front window. Lauren stepped out first, wearing tan slacks, a cream sweater, and the careful expression she used when she wanted to appear kind without actually feeling it. Evan came around the driver's side with his phone already in his hand, thumb moving across the screen. Patricia emerged last, elegant as always, with a camel-colored coat draped over her shoulders even though the afternoon was not cold enough for it. She looked at my house the way real estate people look at a property they have not bought yet, but have already imagined changing. I opened the door before they knocked. That startled them.
Good. Come in, I said.
My voice was calm. I had spent the morning making sure it would be. The white folder sat on the coffee table in plain sight. Beside it was a tray with coffee cups, lemon cookies, and paper napkins folded into neat squares. I had learned long ago that people reveal themselves faster when they think you are still playing hostess. Lauren's eyes moved straight to the folder. Relief passed over her face before she could hide it. There it is, she said, stepping forward. I was worried you might have misplaced it. Not read it. Not opened it. Misplaced it. I almost admired the word choice. It was on the kitchen table, I said. Right where you left it. Patricia smiled and touched my arm lightly, the way people touch the elderly when they want to remind everyone watching that they are gentle. Margaret, dear, we were all a little concerned after the dinner. You left so suddenly. I looked at her hand until she removed it. I was tired. Lauren sat on the edge of the sofa, but Patricia took Richard's old chair without asking. That chair had been his favorite. Brown leather, worn smooth at the arms, angled toward the front window so he could watch rain come over the mountains. I felt something in me go still when Patricia settled into it. She crossed her ankles and looked around my living room. This house must be a lot for you to keep up with by yourself. Evan finally looked up from his phone. That is actually part of what we wanted to discuss, Margaret. He almost never called me Mom anymore. Not since Patricia started doing that soft little laugh whenever he did. At your age, it makes sense to be proactive. Proactive, I repeated. Lauren leaned forward. Mom, we're not trying to upset you. We are trying to prevent problems before they happen. What problems? I asked. She blinked, as if the question itself was unreasonable. Well, managing the house, managing accounts, medical decisions, emergencies. You are alone here. I have lived alone for 9 years. That is exactly the point, Patricia said, her voice smooth as warm syrup. Older women get used to doing everything themselves, and then they do not realize when it becomes too much. She said older women, as if she were not 68 years old herself. As if 4 years and better tailoring placed her in another species. I looked at Lauren. Is that what you think? Lauren gave me a tired smile. I think you are proud. I think sometimes you hear concern as criticism. There it was. The beginning of the script. Emotional instability, dressed up for company. I folded my hands in my lap, so no one would see my fingers curl. Evan cleared his throat. We have a friend who works with family transitions. He helps people simplify estates before things get complicated. He could prepare some documents. Nothing drastic. Just practical. What kind of documents? I asked. Lauren glanced at Patricia, then back at me. A power of attorney, maybe. Some updated permissions. It would let me help if you got overwhelmed. And who decided I was overwhelmed? The room went quiet for half a second. Not long. Just enough for me to hear the furnace click on. Patricia smiled again. No one is saying you are incapable, Margaret. We are saying families should plan while everyone is still able to have a reasonable conversation. Reasonable. Another word they had polished until it looked harmless. I reached for my coffee cup, but did not drink. And Patricia is part of this family planning? Lauren's shoulders tightened. She has been through this with Evan's father. She understands the process. Your father's estate was handled by Thomas Caldwell, I said. I understand the process too. Evan shifted in his seat. Lauren's face hardened for one blink, then softened again. Of course you do, Mom. No one is questioning that. But they were. The folder did. The talking points did. The way Patricia sat in Richard's chair did. For a moment, I saw the whole pattern with painful clarity. The birthday parties I heard about afterward. The Thanksgiving dinner, where Lauren said they thought I was going to Charlotte, though no one had invited me. The Christmas card that said from the Hayes family and included Patricia in the photo, her hand on Sophie's shoulder, while I received one in the mail like a distant cousin. The school recital where Mason ran past me to hug Nana Pat because Lauren had saved her the front row seat. None of it had happened all at once. That was why I had tolerated it. Replacement rarely enters through the front door. It moves one chair at a time. Lauren reached for the folder. I placed my hand on top of it first. Not hard. Just enough. Her eyes lifted to.
Mine.
Mom. Lauren. My voice did not shake. Patricia uncrossed her ankles. Evan stopped looking at his phone. I slid the folder toward Lauren. You left this here. You should be more careful with important papers. Her cheeks flushed. She took it quickly and held it against her chest. Thank you.
Of course, I said.
I know how much paperwork matters. No one spoke for a moment. I let the silence work. Then Patricia stood, smoothing her coat. Well, I am glad that is settled. Perhaps we can talk again when everyone is less emotional. She looked at me when she said everyone. I smiled for the first time that day. Perhaps. Lauren kissed my cheek on the way out. Her lips barely touched my skin. We will call you this weekend, she said. We both knew she would not. I watched them leave through the same front window where Richard used to watch the rain. As their car backed down my driveway, my phone buzzed. It was Thomas Caldwell. His message was brief. Cognitive evaluation scheduled for Thursday. Bank security review Friday. Bring identification and all account records. I locked the front door, walked back to the living room, and looked at Richard's empty chair. Patricia had left a faint smear of lipstick on the rim of her coffee cup beside it. I picked up the cup, carried it to the sink, and washed it slowly. Then I opened the drawer where I kept Richard's old house keys and took out the spare set Lauren still thought she had a right to use. By the end of that week, she would learn that some doors do not close loudly. They close legally. By Thursday morning, I had learned that a person can look perfectly ordinary while quietly defending her entire life. I wore gray slacks, a blue blouse, and the pearl earrings Richard gave me on our 30th anniversary. I drove myself to the medical office on Hendersonville Road with my driver's license, my medication list, and a calmness that felt almost unnatural. Thomas Caldwell had arranged the appointment with a neurologist he trusted, Dr. Elaine Porter, a woman with silver hair, square glasses, and a voice that did not treat age like a diagnosis. She asked me the date, the county, the current president, and the name of the street I lived on. She gave me 5 words to remember, had me draw a clock, count backward, read a short passage, and explain what I would do if I smelled smoke in my house. I answered every question. Not perfectly, because perfection was not the point.
Clearly, consistently, competently.
When she finished, she looked at me and said, Mrs. Whitaker, I see no evidence that you lack the ability to manage your own affairs. I had prepared myself to feel relieved. Instead, I felt insulted that I needed a doctor to confirm what my own daughter should have known. After the appointment, I sat in my car for a while before driving away. I thought about Lauren at age 8, sitting at our kitchen table with an inhaler beside her math homework, crying because she could not understand fractions. I had sat with her for 2 hours, cutting apples into halves and quarters until she finally smiled. I never called her slow. I never called her difficult. I never built a case against her weakest moments. I protected them. That is what mothers do, or at least that is what I thought we did. On Friday, I met Thomas at the bank. The branch manager, a polite man named Gerald Simmons, led us into a glass-walled office and closed the door. I had banked there for 26 years. I knew the tellers by name. I knew the bowl of butterscotch candies near the deposit slips. I knew the way the lobby smelled faintly of carpet cleaner and coffee. Gerald reviewed my accounts, then asked if I had authorized any new users, mailing address changes, online access requests, or third-party permissions. I said no each time. He turned his monitor slightly so Thomas and I could see. There was an inquiry last month, Gerald said.
Not a change. Just a phone inquiry.
A woman asked what documentation would be required if an adult child needed to assist an elderly parent with account management. My mouth went dry. Did she give a name? Gerald hesitated. She identified herself as your daughter. Thomas did not react, but his pen moved across his legal pad. Gerald continued. We did not disclose account details, but she did ask about power of attorney procedures. There it was again. Not concern. Procedure. Not love. Access. I signed new security forms that afternoon. No telephone changes. No online password resets without in-person verification. No new authorization without Thomas Caldwell being notified. Gerald added a verbal password to my accounts, something Lauren would never guess. I chose safe place. The words hurt as they left my mouth, but I wanted them somewhere she could not reach. That evening, I went home and opened the top drawer of my dresser. The yellow Mother's Day card was still there under a stack of scarves. You are my safe place. The purple marker had faded, but I could still see the uneven letters, the crooked heart, the child who had once believed I was shelter. I placed the card on my bed beside the silver bracelet and stared at them until the room blurred. Then my phone rang. Lauren. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, the message appeared. Her voice was bright, too bright. Mom. Just checking in. Patricia was saying we should all get together soon and talk calmly about next steps. Nothing scary. Just some planning. You know how families do. Call me back, please. I played it twice. Families do. I wondered when Patricia had become the person explaining family to my daughter. On Saturday morning, Thomas called with the first draft of my revised estate plan. I need you to understand what this means, he said. Once signed, Lauren will no longer be your executor. Evan will have no authority. Your home will move into the trust. The Boone cabin will go to Emily Carter unless you change your mind. The charitable gifts will be documented. Your retirement beneficiaries will be updated separately. Emily Carter, my niece's daughter, 29 years old, a pediatric nurse in Raleigh. She called me every Sunday evening, even when all she had to say was that her laundry had piled up or her cat had knocked over a plant. When I had knee surgery 2 years earlier, Emily drove 2.5 hours with homemade soup, stayed the weekend, cleaned my bathroom without asking, and never once mentioned money. Lauren sent flowers with a card Patricia had signed for the whole family. I closed my eyes. I understand, I told Thomas. Do you want to leave Lauren anything? He asked. That question sat between us like a closed door. I thought of the country club, the folder, the bank inquiry, Patricia in Richard's chair. I thought of Lauren's little hand in mine outside hospital rooms, her teenage tears, her wedding day smile, her voice saying Patricia had done more for this family than I had in years. Yes, I said finally. Leave her my mother's bracelet. Thomas was quiet. Are you sure? Yes. And include a note that says it was meant to remind her where she came from, not what she was owed. I heard him write it down. After we hung up, I placed the silver bracelet back in its velvet box. For years, I had imagined Sophie wearing it. Then Lauren. Then maybe one day another little girl with my mother's eyes. But legacy is not blood alone. Legacy is how people treat what came before them. That night, Lauren texted again. Mom, we are worried you are being influenced by someone. Please do not make decisions out of emotion. I looked at those words and almost laughed. She was accusing me of influence while standing in Patricia's shadow. I did not answer. I walked to the front door and checked the new lock the locksmith had installed that afternoon. It turned smoothly, quietly, firmly. Then I turned off the porch light and went to bed with the first real peace I had felt in years, because for once, I was not waiting for my daughter to remember my worth. I was putting it in writing. On Monday morning, I signed the first set of documents in Thomas Caldwell's office with my right hand steady and my daughter's voice still living somewhere in the back of my mind. Please do not make decisions out of emotion. That was what Lauren had texted me, as if emotion was the problem and not the plan she had left on my kitchen table. Thomas had 2 witnesses present, both from his office, and a notary who checked my identification twice. He read every section aloud, even though I had read it the night before at my dining room table with a yellow highlighter and a cup of tea that went cold. My old will had been simple. Everything to Lauren. The house, the cabin near Boone, the savings, the retirement accounts, the jewelry, the photographs, the Christmas ornaments, the cast iron skillet my mother used every Sunday after church. I had written that will years earlier because I thought love meant making things easy for the child you leave behind. I did not understand then that easy can become expected, and expected can become entitlement. The new documents were not cruel.
That mattered to me.
I did not want revenge written in legal language. I wanted truth. Lauren was removed as executor. Evan was given no authority over any asset, account, property, or medical decision. The Asheville house was transferred into a revocable trust with strict instructions about who could access it and when. The Boone cabin went to Emily Carter, not because Emily needed it, but because she loved it. She remembered the little porch with the green rocking chairs. She remembered Richard teaching her how to skip stones near the creek. She remembered me without needing a bank statement attached. My retirement beneficiaries changed to a nursing scholarship fund at a community college in western North Carolina and a local women's shelter I had supported quietly for years. Thomas paused before the final personal property section. "Margaret, this is the bracelet clause," he said. I looked down at my hands. My knuckles were older than I remembered.
"Read it," I said. He did.
The silver bracelet would go to Lauren with a letter sealed in my own handwriting. It would not be described as an inheritance. It would be described as a reminder of the women who came before her, of the mother she had, and of the family history she tried to replace with a better table setting. The room stayed quiet after he finished. One of the witnesses looked down at her shoes. The notary blinked too quickly. Thomas simply waited.
"Sign here," he said. So I did.
Margaret and Whitaker. My name looked different that morning. Not prettier. Not younger. Stronger. After the signing, Thomas set up a video statement in his conference room. I sat in a leather chair facing a small camera while the afternoon light came through the blinds in thin white lines. He asked me to state my name, my age, my address, and the purpose of the recording. I answered each question clearly. He asked if anyone had pressured me to change my estate plan. "No," I said. "I am making these decisions freely." He asked why I had chosen to make changes. I looked straight at the camera. Because my daughter and her husband began treating my life as paperwork they could organize before I was finished living it. Because I found written notes suggesting they were preparing to question my ability to manage my own affairs. Because I will not reward people who tried to turn my age into an opportunity. My voice did not crack. That surprised me. Thomas asked if I understood the consequences. "Yes," I said. "I understand that Lauren may be angry. I understand that she may feel embarrassed. I understand that she may claim I was confused or influenced. That is why I am making this statement now, while I am healthy, evaluated, and fully aware." When the recording ended, Thomas removed his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. "You did well," he said. I almost smiled. I have had practice staying calm while my heart is breaking. That evening, I returned home with copies of the documents in a locked file box on the passenger seat. The house felt different when I walked in. Not empty.
Mine.
I made soup, changed into my robe, and placed the file box in the hallway closet behind Richard's old winter coats. At 7:20, Lauren called. This time, I answered. "Mom," she said, too sweetly, "Patricia and I were talking, and we think Saturday would be a good day for all of us to sit down. Just family. No pressure." I looked at the dark window above the sink, seeing my own reflection instead of hers. "That sounds fine," I said. There was a pause. She had expected resistance. "Really?"
"Yes."
"Come at 10. Her voice warmed immediately. "I am so glad. This will be good for everyone." "I think so too," I said. After we hung up, I called Thomas. "They want to come Saturday." "Good," he said. "Then we will be ready." I looked toward the hallway closet where the new documents waited in the dark. Lauren thought Saturday would be the day I finally became manageable. She did not know it would be the day she learned I had already become unreachable. Saturday morning arrived with a sky so clear it felt almost staged. The kind of bright North Carolina morning people put on postcards, all blue light and gold leaves, as if nothing ugly could happen under it. I woke at 6, made coffee, and cleaned a house that was already clean. Not because Lauren deserved polished counters, but because I needed my hands to stay busy. I wiped the kitchen table twice. I dusted Richard's picture on the mantel. I placed fresh towels in the powder room. Then I stood in the living room and looked at every chair. Patricia would not sit in Richard's again. I moved that chair slightly back and placed a stack of photo albums on it. Heavy ones, the kind no polite guest would move without asking. At 9:15, Thomas Caldwell arrived carrying a leather briefcase and wearing the same navy suit he had worn the day I signed the documents. Behind him came a notary named Mrs. Bell, a small woman with white hair and sensible shoes, and a young associate from his office named Daniel Price. I had met Daniel once before. He was quiet, careful, and carried himself like a person who understood that listening was part of the law. Thomas looked around my living room, then nodded toward the coffee table.
This is fine, he said.
You are certain you want them to hear it here? I looked at Richard's photograph, then at the front door Lauren still thought she could open with the old key. Yes, I said. This is the house they were planning around. Let them learn the truth inside it. We set everything out before they arrived. Not dramatically. Neatly. The new will. The trust documents. The beneficiary confirmations. The cognitive evaluation from Dr. Porter. The bank security changes from Gerald Simmons. My video statement on a small flash drive in a labeled envelope. Copies of the pages from Lauren's folder sat at the bottom of the stack, not hidden, not displayed. Waiting. At 9:57, a car pulled into the driveway. I heard doors open. Lauren's voice came first, light and encouraging. See, I told you she would be reasonable today. Then Evan's lower voice. Then Patricia's soft laugh. They knocked. That pleased me. The old key no longer worked, and none of them knew it yet. I opened the door. Lauren smiled too quickly. Good morning, Mom. She leaned in to kiss my cheek, but her eyes went past me into the living room. She saw Thomas first, then the notary, then the papers. Her smile changed shape. Evan stopped behind her. Patricia did not move for one full second. That was the first honest thing I had seen from her. What is this? Lauren asked.
Come in, I said.
No one did for a moment. Then Thomas stood. Mrs. Hayes, Mr. Hayes, Mrs. Hayes, I am Thomas Caldwell, Margaret's estate attorney. We have some matters to review. Lauren looked at me as if I had embarrassed her in public, though we were standing in my own foyer. Mom, I thought we were having a family conversation. We are, I said. This is how adults have one when paperwork is involved. Patricia stepped inside slowly. Her eyes moved over the room and landed on Richard's chair, blocked by albums. A faint tightening crossed her mouth. She took the sofa instead. Lauren sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders nearly touched. Evan remained standing until Thomas gestured toward the armchair opposite them. He sat, but he did not relax. I took the chair nearest the window, the one with the best view of all three faces. Thomas began calmly. Margaret asked me to be present because recent events raised concerns about attempts to influence her estate planning, financial access, and personal autonomy. Lauren let out a short laugh. Attempts to influence her? That is ridiculous. We were trying to help. Then you will have no problem listening, Thomas said. He opened a folder in front of him. Lauren's eyes dropped to it, and I saw recognition flare before she looked away. First, Thomas continued, Mrs. Whitaker has completed a cognitive evaluation with Dr. Elaine Porter. The written report confirms that she is capable of managing her personal, financial, and legal affairs. Patricia smiled faintly. No one said otherwise. I looked at her. You wrote otherwise. Silence. Lauren's head turned toward me. Mom. I reached down, picked up the copied page titled Talking Points, Declining Capacity, and placed it on the coffee table. Not tossed. Placed. This was in the folder you left here. Lauren's face drained so quickly, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Evan leaned forward. That was just a planning document. Planning for what? I asked. My confusion. Or your access? He said nothing. Patricia adjusted the cuff of her sleeve. Margaret, you are misunderstanding the intention. I turned to her.
No, Patricia.
For the first time in years, I am understanding it perfectly. Thomas continued. Because of these concerns, Mrs. Whitaker has revised her estate plan. Lauren Hayes is no longer executor. Evan Hayes has no authority over any property or account. No power of attorney has been granted to either of you. The Asheville residence is now held in trust. The Boone cabin has been separately designated. Beneficiaries have been updated. Lauren stood halfway, then sat back down as if her knees had changed their mind. You changed everything, she whispered. Every name that needed changing, I said. Her eyes filled, but I had learned not every tear is grief. Some are surprise. Some are loss of control. She looked at Thomas. She cannot just do that. Thomas slid the cognitive evaluation forward.
She can. She did.
And she documented why. Evan rubbed his forehead. Patricia finally stopped smiling. That was when I reached for the sealed envelope containing my video statement and placed it on top of the documents. There's more, I said. But before anyone in this room calls me confused, unstable, or influenced, you should know I have already answered that accusation on camera. Lauren stared at me as if she had walked into my house expecting an old woman and found someone she did not recognize. Maybe she had. Maybe that was the point. I had not become someone new. I had simply stopped shrinking into the person they preferred. Lauren reached for the page on the coffee table, but Thomas placed one hand beside it, not touching her, only stopping the moment from becoming hers again.
These are copies, he said.
The originals are secured. Evan's face had gone flat in the way men look when they are trying to calculate without being seen. Patricia sat perfectly upright, her purse resting on her lap, both hands folded over it like she was waiting for a church service to end. I watched Lauren stare at the words she had never expected me to read. Declining capacity, emotional instability, difficulty managing household decisions, vulnerable to outside influence. Mom, she said finally, and her voice softened into the old shape, the one she used when she wanted me to remember her as a child. You're taking this the wrong way. I waited. That was another thing age teaches a woman. You do not have to rush into the first silence someone offers you.
We were scared, she said.
You have been alone for so long. You forget things sometimes. You get overwhelmed. We did not know how else to help. Name one thing I forgot, I said. She blinked. That is not fair. Name one. Evan leaned forward. Margaret, this is exactly the kind of reaction we were worried about. Thomas looked at him. Mr. Hayes, disagreement is not evidence of incapacity. Evan closed his mouth. Patricia gave a small sigh, polished and disappointed. This is becoming hostile. I turned to her slowly.
No, Patricia.
This became hostile when you let my daughter use your name as a replacement for mine. Her expression tightened. I never asked to replace anyone. You sat in my chair at family dinners. You signed cards for my grandchildren before they reached me. You posted pictures calling yourself the heart of the family while I found out about birthdays from Facebook. You may not have asked out loud, but you accepted every inch they gave you. Lauren's cheeks flushed. That is not fair to Patricia. I almost smiled. Even then, even in my house, even with her own folder exposed on my coffee table, she defended Patricia first. There are moments when grief stops being a storm and becomes a fact. That was one of mine. Thomas opened another folder. For clarity, Mrs. Whitaker's revised estate plan is fully executed. The house is protected in trust. The Boone cabin has been designated to Emily Carter. The retirement accounts have updated beneficiaries. The bank has added enhanced verification. Any attempt to present an outdated authorization, request account access, or claim emergency control without proper legal basis will be documented. Evan looked up sharply at the word documented. Are you accusing us of something? Thomas did not blink. I am informing you of boundaries. Lauren turned to me. Emily? You are giving the cabin to Emily? Her voice cracked on the name. Not because Emily mattered to her, because the cabin did. The cabin had a wraparound porch, a stone fireplace, and 20 acres of quiet woods outside Boone. Richard built the porch railing himself. Lauren had once said it would be perfect for summer rentals if someone updated the kitchen. Emily calls me every Sunday, I said. She came after my knee surgery. She cleaned my gutters last spring. She remembers your father's favorite fishing spot. Lauren shook her head. She is not your daughter. No, I said. She just acted like family. Patricia inhaled softly, as if I had said something impolite. I looked at her. You have been quiet about the folder. Because I refuse to dignify this accusation, she said. Those notes could have meant anything. I picked up another copied page and read from it. Patricia can testify that Margaret has become emotionally reactive when discussing estate planning. Patricia has observed resistance to reasonable family support. I set the page down. Those are your words, are they not? For the first time, Patricia looked at Lauren instead of me. Lauren looked away. There it was. The tiny fracture in the polished wall. Evan rubbed both hands over his knees. This got blown out of proportion. We were trying to avoid a mess later. No, I said. You were trying to create one now, while calling it prevention. Lauren's eyes filled again. I am your only child. I know. Everything Dad built was supposed to stay with me. That sentence landed harder than any apology could have. Supposed to. Not hoped. Not cherished.
Supposed to.
I leaned back in my chair and saw her clearly. Not as the little girl with the yellow card. Not as the young mother calling me from the hospital. As a grown woman who had mistaken inheritance for birthright and obedience for love. Your father built a life with me, I said. Not a prize for you to collect. When I became inconvenient, the room went very still. Mrs. Bell, the notary, looked down at her folder. Daniel Price kept his eyes on his notes. Thomas waited because he knew the next words needed to be mine. Lauren wiped her face. So what now? You just cut me out? You throw me away? No, I said. I am leaving you the bracelet. She stared. What bracelet? I reached into the side table drawer and took out the velvet box. The same one I had carried into the country club. The same one I had closed when Patricia fastened diamonds around Sophie's wrist. I placed it on the table between us. My mother's bracelet. The one I meant to give Sophie before you decided old traditions did not fit the life you were building. Lauren looked at the box but did not touch it. Patricia's lips parted slightly. She remembered. Of course she did. People like Patricia remember every room they win.
There will be a letter with it, I said.
It will explain where it came from. It will explain what it meant. It will explain that legacy is not the same as ownership. Lauren whispered, You are doing this to punish me. I shook my head. Punishment would require me to want you to suffer. I do not. I want you unable to profit from erasing me. Evan stood. We should go.
His voice was tight now.
Not angry enough to risk Thomas writing it down. Just tight. Patricia rose with him, smoothing her coat though it had not wrinkled. Lauren stayed seated for a few seconds longer, staring at me like she expected the mother in me to panic, apologize, undo everything, and hand her back the future she had already spent in her mind. I did not. Finally, she stood. You will regret this, she said. The old sentence. The one people use when they have run out of power but still want to sound dangerous. I looked at my daughter, the child I had loved past exhaustion, past grief, past reason. Maybe, I said, but I will regret it as myself. They walked to the door. This time, I did not follow them onto the porch. I did not wave. I did not soften the ending. When the door closed, Thomas gathered the papers slowly. Are you all right? He asked. I looked at the velvet box still sitting on the coffee table. Lauren had left it behind. That told me everything I needed to know. Yes, I said. And for the first time I believed it. For 3 weeks after they left my house, Lauren did not call me. That silence would have broken me once. I would have checked my phone every hour, replayed every word, wondered which sentence I could soften first so she would come back to me. But something had changed in that living room. When Lauren walked out without touching the velvet box, she did not abandon me. She confirmed me. The first call came from Evan, not my daughter. I let it go to voicemail. His message was careful, almost professional. Margaret, I think emotions were high on Saturday. We should revisit this after everyone has had time to cool off. Revisit. As if my will were a restaurant reservation. 2 days later, Lauren sent a text. Mom, I am hurt beyond words. Patricia says she has never seen such cruelty from a mother. I read it while standing in the produce section at Ingles, holding a bag of apples. I put the apples in my cart and did not answer. That was new for me. Silence used to mean I was swallowing pain. Now, it meant I was done feeding it. The week before Thanksgiving, Emily Carter drove up from Raleigh to see me. She arrived with a pumpkin pie, a bag of groceries, and a loose button on her coat she asked me to fix because, in her words, "You are still the only person I trust with a needle." We ate soup in the kitchen, and I told her everything. Not all at once. Just enough. She listened without asking what she was getting. That mattered. When I told her about the cabin, she put her spoon down and cried. "Anne Margaret, I do not want you to think I came around for that." I reached across the table and touched her hand. "That is why you are getting it." On Thanksgiving morning, Lauren finally called. I answered because I wanted to know which version of my daughter grief had chosen to wear. Her voice was tight. "Are you really spending Thanksgiving with Emily?" I looked toward the dining room, where Emily was setting out plates and humming badly to an old Motown song on the radio. "Yes. So she is your daughter now." There it was. Not regret. Competition. I closed my eyes for 1 second.
No, Lauren.
"She is my family." Lauren laughed once, bitter and small. "You picked money over your own child." I looked at Richard's photograph on the mantel, at the house we had repaired board by board, bill by bill, year by year. "No," I said. I picked respect over access. She was quiet after that. For the first time in a long time, I did not rush to fill the silence for her. "You know Patricia was only trying to help," she said finally. "Patricia was trying to stand close enough to my life to benefit from it." "That is not true." "Then why did you leave the bracelet?" Another silence. This one had weight. "I was upset," Lauren whispered. "No," I said gently. "You were disappointed." She hung up soon after. I stood there with the phone in my hand, waiting for the old ache to rise. It came, but it did not control me. Pain is not always a command. Sometimes it is only proof that something mattered. By Christmas, the legal changes were complete. The trust was recorded. The beneficiaries were confirmed. The bank security was in place. Thomas Caldwell kept copies of everything, including the video statement and the folder pages Lauren thought she had recovered in time. The old key Lauren carried no longer opened my door. The old guilt she carried no longer opened me. On Christmas Eve, I placed the silver bracelet back in its velvet box and wrote the letter that would go with it one day. I did not write it angrily. I wrote the truth. I told Lauren about my mother wearing it to church in a blue dress. I told her about wearing it the day I married Richard. I told her about planning to give it to Sophie before diamonds became louder than memory. Then I wrote the sentence I needed her to understand, even if she never accepted it. This bracelet was never proof that you owned what came before you. It was proof that you were trusted to honor it. I sealed the letter and put it with my estate documents. After that, I made hot chocolate and sat on the porch under a blanket, watching the lights of Asheville blink against the dark hills. The house was quiet, but it was not lonely. There is a difference. Loneliness is waiting for people who forgot you. Peace is no longer waiting. I did not stop loving my daughter. A mother does not cut love out of her body like a bad thread. But I stopped confusing love with permission. I stopped letting history be used as a leash. I stopped accepting a seat in the back of my own family, while strangers called it kindness. Laura may tell people I became cold. Patricia may tell people I was influenced. Evan may tell people the paperwork surprised them. Let them. I know what happened. They tried to make me look incapable before I was gone. They tried to turn my age into an opening. They tried to replace my name at the table in the photographs, in the plans, and eventually in the papers. So I replaced every name that treated me like I was already dead. Not because I wanted revenge. Because I wanted to live the rest of my life as the owner of it. That day, I did not stop being Lauren's mother. I stopped being her backup plan. And sometimes, that is the only way a woman gets her name back.